On August 20th, 2020, a grieving mother stood in a field in Newport, Arkansas, surrounded by hundreds of volunteers searching for her missing daughter. A man stepped forward, wrapped his arms around her, and promised they would find Sydney. What she did not know was that less than 24 hours earlier, those same hands had raped and killed her child. He was not there to help. He was there to watch, to blend in, to pretend. This is the story of Sydney Sutherland, and the man who searched for her while knowing exactly where she was buried. Before we talk about the crime, before we talk about the investigation, we need to talk about Sydney, because she was not just a case file, not just a headline. She was a real person with a real life, and that matters. Sydney Claire Sutherland was born on September 18, 1995 in Jonesboro, Arkansas. She was raised on a family farm near the small town of Grubbs, growing up alongside her parents and two older brothers. Life there moved at a slower pace, built around family meals, church gatherings, school sports, and long stretches of open farmland. It was the kind of tight-knit rural community where everyone knew each other. From an early age, Sydney stood out, not because she demanded attention, but because of the way she treated people. Friends later described her as warm, outgoing, and genuine. Someone who could walk into a room and make others feel comfortable within minutes. At Tuckerman High School, Sydney was deeply involved in student life. She joined Spanish Club, Beta Club, and Key Club. She played softball for the Tuckerman Bulldogs, balancing athletics with academics. In 2014, she was named Outstanding Senior, a recognition that reflected not only her grades but her character. Her senior quote captured her personality perfectly. "The meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away." Those were not just words to her. They were a blueprint for how she planned to live. After high school, Sydney pursued nursing, enrolling at Arkansas State University, Newport. In July 2018, she earned her licensed practical nurse certification, but she did not stop there. Determined to advance her career, she continued her education, and by December 2019, she became a registered nurse after graduating from the University of Arkansas Community College at Batesville. She began working at Unity Health Harris Medical Center in Newport. Co-workers admired her compassion and professionalism. Patients trusted her. She brought energy into long hospital shifts. She was building a future rooted in helping others. At home, she was known for her humor and sass, especially with her young nieces who adored their aunt. She loved audiobooks, shopping trips, spending time with her dogs, and staying active. Running was one of her favorite routines. It was her time to decompress, to clear her mind after demanding shifts at the hospital. Sydney was 25 years old, healthy, ambitious, surrounded by family and friends, living in a community that felt safe. She had dreams, plans, and a future unfolding in front of her. Nothing about her life suggested it would be cut short on a quiet country road in the middle of an ordinary Wednesday afternoon. August 19th, 2020 began like any other summer day in Jackson County, Arkansas. The air was thick with heat, the roads were quiet, and nothing seemed out of place. Around 1 p.m., Sydney was at the home of her sister-in-law, Summer Sutherland, spending time with family. There was nothing unusual about her behavior, nothing that suggested fear, stress, or concern. It was a normal afternoon. Later, she returned to the house she shared with her boyfriend, Alex Nicholson. Sometime around 3 p.m., she decided to go for a run. This was part of her regular routine, especially after long hospital shifts. Running helped her clear her head and stay in shape. A security camera at the home captured her walking down the driveway. She was wearing a white athletic top and black shorts. Her hair pulled back, focused and relaxed. She turned west onto Highway 18, heading toward County Road 41, the same route she had taken countless times before. In small farming communities like Newport and Grubbs, people felt safe. Neighbors recognized each other's vehicles. Traffic was light. It was the kind of place where a young woman could jog alone in the afternoon without raising concern. But this time she would not return. By 7 p.m., Alex began to worry. Sydney was not answering her phone. She had been gone for hours. That was not like her. She was responsible. She checked in. She did not disappear without explanation. He contacted authorities, and almost immediately her family turned to social media. Posts began spreading across Facebook asking for help locating Sydney. Within hours, the community mobilized. This case was different from many missing person investigations. There was no waiting period, no assumption that she had left voluntarily. Everyone who knew her understood something was wrong. Sheriff David Lucas, later, said he had watched Sydney grow up. This was not just another report crossing his desk. This was personal for the entire county. Search efforts began that same night and intensified the following day. Helicopters circled overhead. Search dogs were deployed. Volunteers arrived on horseback and four-wheelers. Hundreds of people covered miles of farmland and gravel roads. Law enforcement agencies, including Arkansas State Police, U.S. Marshals, and the FBI, joined the effort. On August 20th, authorities discovered Sydney's cell phone in a field along Jackson, County Road 41, roughly a quarter-mile from her home. Investigators also began analyzing data from her Apple Watch to trace her final movements. But despite the massive search, there was still no sign of Sydney. And among the hundreds of volunteers walking those same roads, scanning those same fields, and offering comfort to her grieving family, was a local farmer named Quake Llewellyn. At that moment, no one suspected that he already knew exactly where she was. By Friday, August 21, 2020, nearly 3 days had passed since Sydney went missing. The search had grown larger with each passing hour. Volunteers continued combing through fields, ditches, and rural backroads. Hope was fading, but no one was ready to say it out loud. Around 2 p.m. that afternoon, something changed. Law enforcement vehicles began blocking off an area near the northern edge of the search zone. Those who had been riding four-wheelers and walking fence lines sensed the shift immediately. Officers were no longer spreading outward. They were focusing inward. Volunteers were quietly told to step back, then told to go home. Investigators had found a body, buried on farmland in rural Jackson County, not far from where Sydney had last been seen alive. The next day, the Arkansas State Medical Examiner confirmed what her family already feared. The body was Sydney Sutherland. The cause of death was multiple blunt force injuries. The manner of death was ruled a homicide. The small community that had rallied together was devastated, but within hours the shock deepened. Quake Llewellyn, the 28-year-old local farmer who had been seen searching alongside volunteers, was arrested and booked into jail. He was charged with capital murder, rape, kidnapping, and abuse of a corpse. For many residents, the name was familiar. He was a third-generation farmer. His family operated farms across several counties in Arkansas. He had attended Tuckerman High School, graduating just a few years before Sydney. According to Sheriff David Lucas, they knew each other. On Monday, August 24th, during a probable cause hearing, Arkansas State Police Special Agent Mike McNeil revealed chilling details from Llewellyn's confession. According to investigators, on the afternoon of August 19th, Llewellyn was driving his pickup truck along County Road 41 to check wells and rice fields. He saw Sydney walking along the gravel road. He drove past her, then made a decision that would change countless lives forever. He turned his truck around. He admitted to abducting her and forcing her into the back of his truck. He drove approximately 3 miles to a remote farm location. There he raped her, killed her, and buried her body. Then he went back to work. He continued checking wells until around 5 or 6 p.m. He went home, ate dinner with his family, and went to bed. Later that night, his father called and asked if he had seen Sydney since she had been reported missing. He said yes, but offered no further explanation. The next day, he answered a call from law enforcement and agreed to speak with them. He appeared cooperative, and at the same time he joined the search effort, standing shoulder to shoulder with the very people looking for the woman he had just buried. Inside the courtroom, about 30 of Sydney's loved ones sat wearing pink, her favorite color. Many were overcome with emotion as the details were read aloud. Llewellyn stood silent in an orange jail uniform and bulletproof vest. He did not speak, but his actions over the previous 3 days had already said everything. As investigators continued building their case, they focused not only on Quake Llewellyn's confession, but on the digital and physical evidence that could confirm every detail. In today's world, phones and wearable devices rarely lie. And in this case, technology became a silent witness. When authorities examined Llewellyn's phone, which he had agreed to let them search, they discovered a location tracking application called Life 360. This app records detailed movement history, including specific coordinates and timestamps. Data from the account placed Llewellyn just yards from the location where Sydney's body was later found, and the timing matched the exact window when she disappeared. That data alone was powerful, but it was not the only technological evidence. Investigators also analyzed Sydney's own digital footprint. Her cell phone records helped establish her final movements along County Road 41, and her Apple Watch provided additional activity data, mapping out the final moments of her run, together. The information created a timeline that aligned with Llewellyn's movements. Prosecutors also utilized advanced phone tracking technology to identify devices present in the area during the critical time frame. That analysis narrowed down potential suspects and further confirmed Llewellyn's presence in the exact location where the crime occurred. Beyond digital tracking, there was physical evidence. On August 21st, when Llewellyn went to speak with law enforcement, he was wearing Ariat work boots. During questioning, he admitted those were the same boots he had worn on the day Sydney was killed and buried. Investigators seized the boots and sent them to the Arkansas State Crime Lab for examination. Search warrants executed at family properties uncovered clothing he said he had worn during the crime: black pants, a black shirt, additional garments, placed in a laundry basket exactly where he described. The consistency between his statements and the evidence further strengthened the case. Months later, during a court-ordered mental evaluation conducted by forensic psychologist Dr. Lacey Willett, Llewellyn provided a slightly altered version of events. He claimed he accidentally struck Sydney with his truck after turning around on the gravel road. He said he panicked, feared getting into trouble, and decided to hide her body. However, even in that version, he admitted removing her clothing and attempting sexual contact. Investigators had already documented in the probable cause affidavit that he confessed to rape during police questioning. Dr. Willett concluded he was competent to stand trial and had been competent at the time of the crime. There was no evidence of mental disease or defect. He was not under the influence of drugs or alcohol. He was functioning normally in his daily life, managing farm operations, interacting with family, making rational decisions. The evidence painted a clear picture. This was not confusion, not delusion, not a break from reality. It was a deliberate sequence of actions, supported by data, supported by confession, supported by physical proof, and that digital trail ensured there would be no doubt about who was responsible for Sydney Sutherland's death. By the summer of 2021, more than a year after Sydney's murder, prosecutors made their position clear. If Quake Llewellyn was convicted of capital murder, they would seek the death penalty. The case had drawn statewide and national attention. Emotions were high, and the evidence against him was overwhelming. Because of intense media coverage in Jackson County, a judge ruled it would be nearly impossible to seat an unbiased jury there. The trial was moved to Lawrence County to ensure fairness in the legal process. Both sides prepared for what was expected to be a highly publicized and emotionally charged trial. Llewellyn's defense team argued that the incident began as a tragic accident, pointing to his later statement during the psychological evaluation where he claimed he accidentally struck Sydney with his truck. They filed motions attempting to remove the death penalty from consideration, but prosecutors stood firm. Then, on October 1, 2021, 408 days after Sydney's death, everything changed. In a packed courtroom filled with more than 60 people, many wearing pink in honor of Sydney, Quake Llewellyn chose to plead guilty to capital murder and rape. By entering the plea, he waived his right to a jury trial. In exchange, prosecutors agreed to dismiss the kidnapping and abuse of a corpse charges and remove the death penalty from the table. Judge Rob Bratton immediately sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. There would be no trial, no weeks of testimony, no public replaying of every horrific detail. For Sydney's family, this plea meant they would be spared the emotional toll of reliving the crime in open court, but it also meant they would never hear a full public explanation of why. Before sentencing, Deputy Prosecutor John Petty summarized the case, outlining the evidence and the brutality of the crime. Then it was time for victim impact statements. Sydney's mother, Maggie Sutherland, stood and addressed the man who had killed her daughter. She asked him to look her in the eyes, and he did. She told him that Sydney was not his to take. She called him evil. She asked questions that will likely haunt her forever. Did she fight? Did she cry? Did she call out for her brothers? She told him the words that would echo beyond that courtroom. "The hands you hugged me with are the same hands you killed her with." Sydney's father described him as a coward who used a truck against his daughter. Her brother spoke about sleepless nights and the pain of explaining to a child why her aunt was never coming back. Llewellyn remained silent. No apology, no explanation, no visible emotion. With that, the legal chapter of the case closed. But for Sydney's family, the sentence was not an ending. It was simply the beginning of a lifetime without her. After the sentencing, the legal process was over. But the impact of Sydney Sutherland's murder continued to ripple through Newport, Grubbs, and the entire state of Arkansas. A small farming community that once felt untouched by violent crime now carried a permanent scar. Sydney was laid to rest at Greenhaw Cemetery. Due to pandemic restrictions, her funeral service was limited in attendance, but it was live-streamed, so that friends, co-workers, and extended family could say goodbye. Hundreds watched virtually. Messages of love and grief poured in from across the country. Her life had clearly reached far beyond county lines. To honor her memory, Arkansas State University Newport established the Sydney Sutherland Memorial Scholarship, supporting students pursuing careers in healthcare. It was a fitting tribute for a woman who dedicated her life to caring for others. Her legacy now helps future nurses follow the same path she once walked. Every year on August 19th, family and close friends gather on County Road 41, the same road where she was last seen alive. They wear pink, her favorite color. They release balloons. They stand together in silence and remembrance. It is not just about mourning how she died. It is about remembering how she lived. Friends have said they do not want Sydney's story defined only by violence. They want people to remember her laugh, her compassion, her determination, her love for her nieces, her commitment to her patients. They want her remembered for her light, not just the darkness that ended her life. Meanwhile, Quake Llewellyn remains incarcerated at the Varner Supermax unit in Lincoln County, Arkansas. He will spend the rest of his life behind bars, no parole, no second chances. His name will forever be tied to one of the most disturbing crimes in recent Arkansas history. Years later, the case continues to draw attention. Court records have been requested for television productions. Documentaries revisit the timeline. Analysts debate whether the crime was premeditated or a violent escalation after a chance encounter. But one reality remains unchanged for Sydney's family. There is no true closure. There are questions that may never be answered. Why did he turn around? Why did he choose violence? Why did he join the search and hug her mother? Dr. Lacey Willett found no mental illness, no break from reality, which means the actions were conscious decisions one after another. He chose to stop. He chose to abduct. He chose to assault. He chose to kill. He chose to bury. He chose to lie. Sydney Sutherland was 25 years old, a registered nurse, a daughter, a sister, an aunt. She went for a run on a Wednesday afternoon on a road she had traveled many times before, and she never came home. Her senior quote said, "The meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away." Sydney gave her gift every day she walked into that hospital, every time she cared for a patient, every time she showed up for her family. Her life was beautiful, and she should still be here. If this case moved you, if you believe Sydney's story deserves to be remembered, make sure you subscribe to Real Crime Pulse, like this video, and share it so more people hear her name. We bring you detailed true crime stories from across America every week. This is Real Crime Pulse, and we will see you in the next case. Stay aware, stay safe.